Black Oni.
Hey man, how are you?
I am doing well, man. I'm doing great, actually.
Good.
How you doing?
Good. We're just working and starting to sort of see the end of the day.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Where are you calling in from?
Boston.
Oh, okay. So you've seen the end of the day a long time ago.
Yeah, I'm a little tired, not gonna lie, but I'm I got my energy back. I found a way.
Good. 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 That's a good skill to have.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. First, before we really start anything, I just want to let you know that I appreciate you taking the time to do this. I know it's not really a easy ask to take time out of your day, especially when you're doing so much right now.
No, not at all. No problem at all.
Yeah, this is very exciting for me because obviously I'm sure you've heard this many times, but I'm a big fan of your work,
Oh, cool.
and also I'm a big supporter of kind of the attitude you have towards the industry in general. You don't like to shy away from telling the truth, even if it sounds a little blunt sometimes. So that's like right up my alley.
Yeah, I think I've always, I don't. I think I've always just been that way. So it's never been a conscious choice. Just happens.
Yeah, yeah, totally. I think it's a good quality to have. Not enough of that is going around, I think.
Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah. But I won't waste too much time just gushing over here. Now
No,
I'll get to
let's
the
just
actual.
let's just let's just talk. No worries.
Yeah, yeah. So I guess the first question I'll have for you, speaking as someone who has always been interested in the game design world and creating content for games, what is your experience as a game director been like, and how did you come across the role in general?
I mean, it's two questions, right? The how I came across it, I think, was I had started as a tester at Sony way back when, so it was when we were doing like 16-bit, like 8-bit Game Gear shit. I was just
Right.
testing stuff like Last Action Hero and Cliffhanger, and I think the first game I ever tested was Hook.
Wow.
Yeah. So, but I had come out of going to college to learn to make movies. I've been making movies my whole life and stuff when I was a kid. And so for me, there was always that role of people, it's not always one person, but a lot of times it is, on a team that is sort of writing the main script and then working and collaborating with a lot of people to sort of bring it to life. And sort of you start off by guiding the vision, and then you end up sort of really, opening that vision up to people on the team who can improve it and make it the whole team's vision. And so that had been my view from filmmaking. And so it just made sense when I got into Sony and started designing that it's like that would be a role that, we didn't really see a lot of really much of any in the industry at the time. And so I just was like, well, I think the games we're working on could use this, because otherwise it's just you get into a meeting and it's whoever, on any given day can talk the loudest and persuade people the most, but there's not necessarily a consistency of vision throughout the process. So part of it was that. In terms of sort of the day to day, is it's not much different. I mean, it's working with really talented people, and being grateful you get to work with them and they get to bring their ideas and their vision to the overall vision. And the main job is really just making sure that you're always keeping track of what the goal of the product is supposed to be, because you're going to hear 1,000 great ideas over the course of a couple of weeks.
Right.
And it's you have to be careful not to just go with the best ideas. It has to be the best ideas that fits the overall vision of what you're trying to make. And it's hard sometimes because not everybody will, you try to share the vision, but a lot of times people have competing visions, or they don't necessarily see all the pieces that you're privy to because they're busy doing their own thing on the game.
Right.
And so sometimes it's hard, you got to do a lot of convincing, and, people have to sometimes, go on faith. I remember I mean, it doesn't matter if your last game was a hit or not. I mean, I remember on God of War, there were people threatening to mutiny because they were like, Jaffe doesn't know what the fuck he's doing, and he doesn't know what he's, because it's just like it's not to say that they didn't see it, they just saw something different than what I was seeing.
Right.
So it's not always easy to sort of, take extremely talented people and sort of say, you just got to trust this, or let me try to sell you on this because it's gonna be something different than what's out there already. So anyway, that's kind of the job.
Right, right. And I can definitely see how, especially if people, start developing their own visions for how things maybe should look or maybe could look, how that can kind of compete with the overall vision if so many people have their own ideas of what that's supposed to look like.
No, I can tell you, I mean, when we were doing God of War, the example that always comes up to me is we had guys on the team that were just really passionate about Japanese, not just fighting games from Capcom, but also kind of like, Devil May Cry and what was the one?
Onimusha.
No, not Onimusha, because Onimusha was kind of where I capped out. I thought Onimusha was just smart enough for me.
Dude, I love that game so
I love
much.
that whole series. I love the third one with Jean Reno. That was fucking really cool.
Best one.
But what was the one? Was it not Tenchu? What was the one that's still Ninja Gaiden?
Ninja Gaiden. Yeah.
Right. So it was kind of like, there was this sense of, but this is how you make the combat. And they weren't in any shape or form wrong. They were absolutely right if we were trying to make that kind of game.
Right.
But what I kept saying was, we don't want to appeal to the hardcore fighting fan. We want to basically appeal to people who like Zelda, but want a more mature, grown-up rapper over Zelda, basically.
Right.
And that's not, that's a valid argument, and that's what we ended up doing. But there was a lot of times where people were like, this combat doesn't make any sense. It's like, no, if you're trying to compete with Devil May Cry, it doesn't make a goddamn bit of sense. But that wasn't the vision. And so that was one of the cases where it was just it's hard to drag everybody along sometimes.
Yeah, totally. I think it's really interesting that you made that statement about like the combat, for example, and how people were kind of thinking that was it wasn't right or it didn't feel right. Like I know a lot of other games that came out after God of War have been trying to imitate God of War. So it's really interesting that you say that, because there's so many other games that came out that fundamentally, just down to the fact that they had the light and the heavy attacks, and the way that you platform around was basically a carbon copy of God of War. So
yeah, there was Dante's Inferno was total
literally.
Yeah, it was.
Go ahead.
No, I was going to say something smarmy about EA, but I chose not to. I mean, I didn't mind. It's not like we can own a mechanic suite, thank God. But there were, it was interesting. There was a Conan game that came out, and that was exact. And I didn't mind, because we took such inspiration from Conan and all of the Howard stories making God of War. That's like, I don't fucking take the whole thing for free. We don't care. It's like you're Conan. Yeah. But but it wasn't a very good game. But it was amazing how similar it was to God of War. So anyway,
yeah. I think that also ties into my next question too, because it's really, humans are so perceptive, right? We internalize everything that we see around us. We have these experiences, and then we try to appropriate those to kind of what's going on at that moment. And so you mentioned Zelda, and I could totally get that vibe. And I remember you talking about that in a documentary from like way back in the day. Yeah. What was, aside from Zelda, what was your biggest influence as a game creator? So that can be either a game, or that can be an experience you had, or that can be... Well,
do you mean on that game, or games in general, or?
I think games in general.
Well, it's changed. Up until God of War, I was very heavily influenced with sort of the contributions I would bring to the teams I worked with, by the movies. I mean, I grew up just a huge fanboy of like Spielberg and Lucas and Robert Zemeckis and Ridley Scott and Paul Verhoeven, and you can see those influences on Twisted Metal. You can see them on God of War. Certainly Stephen King, Creepshow, all that shit. But after God of War, I totally and I haven't I said this in a speech back at PAX a while back. I may never have the same level of success that we were able to achieve with God of War and Twisted Metal Black, going down the path that I think we should be going down. But it was after God of War that I was like, these aren't movies, they're games. And I had always loved Nintendo. I'd always loved Miyamoto. But after God of War shipped, and I realized that we hadn't come 1/100th of the distance to where I wanted God of War to be in terms of, there were B- level movies straight to video
Right.
that were still better experiences in terms of cinematic experiences than we could ever do. And I started to realize it's like, it's stupid. I was late to the table, late to the party, but it's like the medium is interactivity. That's what makes it unique and makes it special. And it's after that, I think you can clearly see the influence of that turning point. They weren't big hits, but I mean, if you look at like Calling All Cars was the first game after God of War that I said, I just want to be working on stuff that's really playing to the strengths of the medium. It doesn't mean we're going to get it right every time, but I think there's a purity of, there's a reflection of my shift in understanding of the medium about the purity of what makes the medium unique. And so now these days I'm much more influenced by, board games, card games, old school Nintendo, Miyamoto, certain PC games. I don't particularly like MOBAs. I can't get into them, but there's aspects of them that I find really fascinating and impressive. I think turn-based strategy games, stuff like Fire Emblem, are really influential. So I would say that's kind of where I'm at now. And I think the new game we're working on, Drawn to Death, I think is definitely a reflection as well. It's very much it's very mechanical.
Right. That's really interesting. I'm on the camp of people who kind of feel that games are still finding their stride in ways in which they can blend the idea of like interactivity and kind of a cinematic or interesting storytelling aspects that are built into the core gameplay versus regular cinematics. So I can kind of get what you're saying though in terms of like trying to have more playing to the strengths of actually getting into the gameplay, but do you think?
But again, I mean, it's not even to the strengths of the gameplay; it's to the strengths of interactivity, right? And so, I'm not suggesting that narrative can't be expressed in what we call games, but I think the only way that it interests me is if the narrative is expressed fundamentally through the mechanics. If it's just like a bunch of pretty cutscenes, but ultimately after the game begins, the cutscenes could have been there, could not have been there. My experience has nothing to do with the narrative. Then I'm just like, you know what, you guys should have made a movie. You clearly that's what you wanted to do.
That's fair. That's really interesting. And so I guess
I know your next question, and I know you're sitting there struggling, going, "How do I ask him about the order? How do I do this in a way that that is tactful?" And but anyway, go ahead.
No. I was going to get to that, but my next question was going to be something different. But now that you mentioned that, I would love to kind of hear what your thoughts. I mean, first I need to know if you got a chance to play it. Or
no, I haven't yet. I mean, the big turning point for me was, I know Rue. I like Rue a lot, who directed that game, and I ran into him at PSX in December, and we were talking about it. And he said to me, and I thought it was, it really opened my eyes to that game in the sense that he's like, look, we know what we are. We want to make a game that is interrupting the gameplay and showing you something that we think is cool. We want to tell a story and establish a brand, and we want to do it this way. And who's to say that is just because that's not what a traditional game is sort of defined as? Why is that bad? And I was like, I thought it was a really good point. It's like, I don't know if I'm going to love, hate, or be indifferent to it when I do get around to playing it.
Right.
But what I like about at least what they're trying is it's not like they didn't do it. They didn't go into the forest blind. They knew what they were doing. And they're like, no, we like this. We want to be a movie that is also a game. And we're okay with the fact that we're going to take hits from people who are basically saying, watch a cutscene for 12 minutes, walk down a hall for 15 seconds, and watch another 6-minute cutscene.
Yeah.
I like the fact that, like, if they're intentionally designing around that and saying we know what this is,
right.
And if they're willing to stand on that and say we think that's good interactive entertainment, then as long as they're doing it willingly and consciously, I don't know if I'm going to like it, but I at least like that they're coming at it with a clean, clear vision of what they're going for.
Yeah, I think that's
because a lot of games don't do that. A lot of games will just sort of try to have it both ways, and then it just really comes off as just shitty. And at least these guys are kind of just owning it, and I think there's a boldness about that has me interested in trying it out at least.
Right. So my favorite game of all time is Metal Gear, and so
yeah.
I assume that might play a little bit into your thoughts on that as well.
Metal Gear is one of my favorite series of all times. I think the gameplay is great, the IP is great, the characters are great. I think the story is horrible. I love the world. I think they've just done a phenomenal job. But I always make fun of it. I make fun of it at work. I'm just like, lolly lo. What the fuck is lolly?
I still don't know.
It sounds like a dumb fucking nursery rhyme from like preschool. Lolly fucking. I mean, you should be ashamed of yourself to even put that in a game and charge me $60 for that statement alone. So I love Metal Gear.
With this.
Yeah. I mean, I love Metal Gear. I love the characters. I love the world. I love the gameplay of those games. I love how emergent those games are, and I love how they can drop you into. Like, to me, a lot of people talk about Grand Theft Auto as like having all this freedom.
Yeah.
Metal Gear is the one I love because it's not overwhelming freedom. They say, here's your little box. You're fighting this helicopter going up this church that's being blown apart by missiles.
Yeah.
And you can't leave the church. Yeah. And you know what your end goal is, kill the helicopter. But within that structure, I can play with all these toys however I want to solve the puzzle however I want, and that I just think is fantastic. So I love Metal Gear as well. I think it gets praised in the story department, and that's ridiculous. Yeah. I mean, I literally wanted to swallow a fucking bottle of cyanide if it comes in pill form or fucking liquid form at the end of the last Metal Gear on PS3 when it would never fucking end. And it was just like, could you please end this game? And it was just like, now he's at the grave site. Now it's bodies are coming off of helicopters. Like, what the fuck is this about? Yeah, so I definitely think they have a story problem.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I love the series though.
Yeah. That's good to hear. I'm really glad to hear that because I'm with you on that as well. They did really kind of lose me on some of that story stuff. I still love the story as well just because I'm so attached to the world and the characters themselves. But
I love that stuff. Yeah.
So, what was your biggest challenge going from AAA to indie?
There's no difference. There's zero difference. There's no difference. It's you know. I mean, I've been fortunate because I've been. I mean, we're not indie in the sense that I'm not funding. I mean, I funded the initial launch of the company with my own money, but we have a really nice deal with Sony, and they're treating us well, and they've always treated us well, and so it's not like we're the guys in we're not self-funding the whole thing, and it's like every week is, oh shit, how are we going to make payroll? I mean, it's not that kind of indie experience. It's only indie in the sense that we're not part of a bigger company. But no, I mean, I've worked with Sony on every game I've worked on, and they've always been, whether I work directly for them or with them, I've always loved working with Shu and Rhodey and Alan Becker and the whole Hee Haw gang. It's just, they're really good to work with.
That's really good to hear. I actually didn't know that it was still kind of a partnership with Sony. I was just assuming that you guys were just making Sony stuff because that's kind of who you want to go with. Well, no, it is. I mean, we're not owned by Sony, but I mean, it's still our company. But I mean, it's they're funding this game. Absolutely. Gotcha. That's awesome. Yeah. This is probably a question you've gotten a bunch of times before, and I don't want to keep you too much longer. I do. But I probably got time for 2 more questions, and I got to get back to it. All right, 2 more. All right. Where is one setting or time that you would love to explore with a God of War game if you were to return to doing those games?
The cover speed test. I emailed you the link.
Oh, okay. Cool. Well, hang on one sec. Sure thing. It's up. It's good.
Yeah, okay. It's in there. It's noticeably different. The root weapons. So all of the regular weapons, it'll be faster. But if you grab a heavy weapon or like the katana stuff, it's the normal speed for. Do you like it? Like if you? I think it's really cool. It's definitely noticeable. Okay. It would be a good oh shit buff to run away or chase someone down. Would you grab it? Let's look at it. Okay, yeah. Cool. Thanks, dude. Okay.
Well, there's two answers to that, right? The first one is, you can find on the internet my original design for God of War 3, which I did design on that game for about 3 weeks, and then I ended up kind of going, okay, I'm going to go off and do something else, and Stig came in and he did his thing and stuff. But I had been wanting to, Corey and I had been steering God of War 2 into the direction of God of War 3, which was basically Zeus is killed in the first 5 minutes, and it basically becomes a big battle royale amongst all of the ancient religions to take over Olympus. And so you have Egyptian mythology, Norse mythology, a couple other sort of Hindu mythology, all battling for the souls of humanity after Zeus is killed and there's this power vacuum. And sort of that was where we wanted God of War 3 to end up. And God of War 3 was supposed to end with the death of the old gods and the birth of Jesus. And that was going to be sort of the beginning of the new thing. And then the next version of God of War was going to have Kratos was going to have had the Blades of Chaos dipped in the fires of Hades or Hell at this point, and it became the Reaper's Scythe, and he would become, in a new series of games set in modern times, he would have become the Grim Reaper, and he would basically be Death, which is a perfect job for him in general. Really awesome. So that's what we wanted to go with it. Yeah, it would have been awesome. Would have been great.
FUPIC, absolutely amazing. I want that to be a thing.
So that was the plan, and I know, there's rumors they're working on a new one. There's rumors Corey's directing it. I don't know if that's where they're going with this one, but I mean they've totally changed the story in 3, so I don't know how they could backtrack it unless suddenly it was like it was all a dream. So who knows what they're going to do with it now? But that's an answer to your question of what I would do with it. I would go back and tell the story we had originally wanted to tell.
That's an awesome answer. I didn't even think of that. My final question for you, I know you got other things you got to do. We talked a little bit earlier about how Twisted Metal and God of War, they kind of, in one way or another, helped define a genre and kind of facilitated evolution within a genre. So I wanted to talk a little bit about Drawn Up to Death and what elements or what takeaways or what big things you'd want either developers or people to internalize about that experience.
Well, I mean, to me, what I really hope we can do with this new game is, a lot of times the games that excite me are the ones that can we deliver something that I wish was being delivered but isn't. So in God of War, the motivation was, hey, let's do a game. I remember the moment I was buying Banjo-Kazooie for my N64, and the back of it promised you were going to go on this big adventure. And ultimately, I loved Banjo-Kazooie, but you got home and it wasn't a big adventure. It was a collect-a-thon. It was just wander around and collect stuff. And that was really fun, but I never felt like I had journeyed on this great adventure. I just felt like I was wandering around collecting shit. And so with God of War, it was about, can we really make a game that makes the player feel that they're going on a big, epic, cinematic adventure, right? So the new game, I love shooters, but what I don't like about them is as they've evolved, they've gotten so chaotic and they've gotten so filled with players that I've stopped feeling about them the way I used to, which was I like to be more engaged with the people I was fighting, or I like to have more of a sense of tactics and strategy, and it just became pure reflex, which there's a beauty to that, I was watching some guys in the office today play the new Unreal Tournament that I guess just came out this week or today or what have you, and it was like, I don't know what was going on in their heads, but as a viewer of their game, it felt like just pure reflex. And there, like I said, there's something very wonderfully pure about that. But I like the idea of us making a game that takes the energy of a shooter but merges it with sort of the intelligence of, and I can't say a fighter because we're not making a game as smart as Street Fighter 4 or something, but a fighter like Mortal Kombat or a brawler like Smash Brothers or Power Stone. The idea of sort of taking the intelligence of those kinds of games, or where your brain goes when you're playing those kinds of games, and merging it with sort of the pace and adrenaline and purity of a shooter. That to me is what I hope we can kind of bring to the market that I don't really see a lot of. And that's why we've made conscious choices. Like people say, "Oh, you're only doing it with 4 players. What the fuck?" And it's like, yeah, 4 players because we could stick 16 players in here, and then you'd get shot by maybe 3 people, and you wouldn't remember who shot you last. You wouldn't start to learn their play style. You wouldn't start to learn how they like to, run for the health at the last couple of seconds. So you want to make sure you can go and sort of dominate that part of the map. None of that would be happening because your brain is just on the moment-to-moment survival instinct of what's right in front of your face, and that's wonderful. But we wanted to try to do something that is smart, not smarter like better, but just has a different flow and cadence and spirit to it.
That sounds really interesting. I that tactical is where I'm at. I love.
Absolutely, tactical is a great way to put it. I mean, is it there yet? Sometimes, other times it plays like utter shit. And there are days where I think we're making the next big thing, and there are days where I'm like, oh my fucking god, But that's every game I've ever worked on. The hits and the misses have always felt that way. You never fucking know. So awesome. You just count yourself lucky. You get to work with really good people, and you hope for the best.
Well, David, when does the game come out?
We haven't announced that yet.
Okay.
It may be early access sometime this year, but not because we're being, we're not really playing. It's a very unusual game in that in the past we've been very release this character to the press on this day and release this screenshot of this level on this day. It's such a different time now in terms of sort of marketing your game and getting your game out to the world that we're just like, hey, Sony, can I show people this? Yeah, sure, go ahead. Because ultimately it's so much more about the one-on-one connection with the individual players and the smaller journalists that are basically out there really covering things in a way that connects with your audience.
That's right.
That we're not announcing it because we're being cautious or we just honestly don't know.
Right.
It's like if we're going to do an early access hopefully this summer. If it goes really well, hopefully we'll be out this year, beginning of next year. If it goes shitty, hopefully we'll get some more time. We'll be out mid next year. We have no clue yet.
That's good to hear. Good to hear. Don't put it out until it's done. We've had enough people putting out products that aren't finished. So
yeah, absolutely.
David, again thank you for your time. This has been
you got it. It's been fun to talk.
Yeah, absolutely. I wish you and your team lots of luck. I'll be spreading the word, of course.
Cool, man. We appreciate that. Thank you.
Absolutely. And thank you guys at home for tuning in to this exciting interview. It's been a great moment.
Talk to you soon.
Talk to you soon.